Hello, Your Excellency. Thank you for being with us today. What are your views on the vaccine?
Well, originally, I decided not to say anything publicly because it's very charged with politics, and many times people lose their objectivity because it's political, and so I just felt that it was something that I didn't want to get involved in, and most people had very strong convictions about it. But lately, there's been some clergy who are saying, with claiming a certain authority, that it is objectively and for everybody a mortal sin to take it, and they have their reasons for it. And so I thought, since this troubles some people's consciences, I should say something. Because I don't agree that it is for all and everyone a mortal sin. So I have done a question and answer study on it, which our benefactors will receive, and which may be up on the internet shortly, which makes the following points. The first point that I make in it is that we clergy are not competent to make scientific judgments. You would have to have, in my opinion, a degree in immunology, a very advanced degree in immunology or a related science, in order to make a very educated judgment concerning the effectiveness of the vaccine and its safety. So we are not in that position to do that. We are laymen with regard to those sciences, and so we should not be expected to pronounce on the nature, effectiveness, or the safety of the vaccine. So we are, as in that sense, as ignorant as the average person concerning those things. We have no training in that, so you shouldn't look to us to make those decisions. Secondly, we have no authority to declare the vaccine sinful. A declaration of that nature would pertain only to the Holy See. We are clergy who are in an emergency situation in the church. I am a bishop and others are bishops only because it is necessary to administer the sacrament of holy orders and the sacrament of confirmation. But we have no power of jurisdiction. We have no power to rule the church. We have no power to make moral decisions. Even a local bishop could not, a bishop in a diocese before the council could not make a decision that something was a mortal sin. The Holy See, only the universal church could say, we have studied this is a mortal sin for everyone to do. That's why you have that universal authority in the Pope and in his dicasteries, and the Holy Office is the principal dicastery. So that's the second point, is that we don't have the authority to declare the vaccine sinful. We don't have the authority to bind the consciences of the faithful with regard to this. So the third point is that we can only present the moral rules that the church has from its teaching and from its general moral theology. So moral theologians give us the rules concerning these things, and we do know these rules. We research them, we talk about them, we ask other clergy what they think, and we weigh them, we present them as they are, and we give references for them, and that's all we can do. We can just present to you the objective rules. The fourth point that I make is that many factors determine the morality of taking the vaccine, both objective factors, which are the moral rules, which I just spoke about, and subjective factors, which are the convictions of each person concerning the vaccine. So if you are convinced that it is the mark of the beast, as some people are convinced of, you obviously can't take it. It would be a mortal sin for you to take it. If you are convinced that it is likely to cause your death, or to in some way seriously impair your health, that there's a high probability of this, and then you can't take it, obviously. You cannot accept the vaccine if you are convinced of that. So it depends on your own convictions, your own research, what you think about it. And I cannot form your conscience on that because, again, these convictions arise from scientific data. And you inform yourself if you come to the conclusion that these things are true, that all of the negative things are true about the vaccine, then yes, you must avoid it. On the other hand, if you are convinced that it is safe and that there is very little chance that you would die from it or have long-term serious and ill effects, then you could take it. It's as simple as that. So there's a lot of subjective factors in it, and that's why there cannot be a blanket statement, this is a mortal sin, or even a blanket statement, it is not a sin. To a great extent, it depends on how you apply the moral rules. So we give you the moral rules, and you apply it to your own case. So that's and I talk about the moral rules in this question and answer that I have done concerning it. So each person, therefore, must make a moral decision for himself concerning the vaccine. And in so doing, he should not condemn others for not agreeing with him. So if you say, I think I can take the vaccine, that it is moral for me to take the vaccine, you should not condemn those who say, I think it's immoral. And vice versa. If you think it's immoral, you should not condemn those who think that it's moral. See, so that's the situation that we're in. We are without apostolic authority, and we cannot presume to take that apostolic authority and bind the consciences of the faithful. We are simply clergy who provide sacraments to people and who provide instruction to people in this emergency situation of the church in which the modernists have deprived us of authority in the Catholic Church.
So, Your Excellency, what is your personal view? Is it for you a mortal sin, or is it sinful to take it?
No, in my personal view, I do not think that it is a mortal sin. I think it all boils down to one question. How much do you trust the common medical science and common medical practice in the United States or in Europe, where there has been great strides in keeping people alive with all sorts of modern means? How much do you trust that? If you trust it, and personally I think you can trust it, I think that it is legitimate to take the vaccine. If you don't trust it, then obviously it is not legitimate to take the vaccine. So I think it boils down to that. They are recommending the vaccine. They are saying it's all right. Also, it has been in use for over a year. People have been taking it. There are, in comparison to the number of people who have taken it, the number of deaths or ill effects is very, very low. In this country alone, 220 million people have taken it so far, and so the effects, the ill effects, are very low, and we don't even know. The numbers come from something called VAERS, which is an acronym for an agency that records the ill effects of the vaccine. You don't even know if the ill effects arise from the vaccine. So there's really no scientific data on it that this has caused ill effects. And all vaccines cause some ill effects, even cause some deaths. And among them was the polio vaccine, which was praised by the Pope himself, Pope Pius XII. But there were some deaths of children in the administration of that vaccine. I had that vaccine myself when I was a child, because there was a vaccine mandate for going into the Catholic school that you get the polio vaccine, also diphtheria and various other vaccines that we had to take. I remember it as many years ago in the 1950s, the doctor getting out that horrible needle and sticking me with it. So, I mean, it's a very, very burned memory for me. So it's nothing new. This is absolutely nothing new. It's just that it is politically charged. And I would make that point too, that you have to divide the science and the politics. Yes, the left might be using this for very evil purposes, but that does not affect in itself the moral qualifications of taking the vaccine. So that's my general attitude toward it. So not everyone may agree with me, but again, I don't think we should be tearing each other apart about this thing. I think that it is a great deal of it depends on personal convictions.
Since Your Excellency, you mentioned the political motivation, what about the mandate? Are you in favor of the mandate, or what are your thoughts?
Well, first I would say that the mandate is nothing new. Pius VII, who was Pope from 1800 to 1823, had an obligatory mandate, that's redundant, but he had a mandate for all of the citizens of the Papal States, all of them, to take the smallpox vaccine. Now, the smallpox was a disease which was far more dangerous and had more fatalities than COVID. So he required that. And then his successor, Leo XII, did away with it. He was against it. And then there was Pius VIII, who didn't last long. And finally, in the early 1830s, you had Gregory XVI, who came to the throne, who lasted until 1846. And he reinstated the vaccine mandate against smallpox. So vaccine mandates are nothing new. I remember in 1971, when I went over to a cone to have a look-see in April of 1971, I had to be vaccinated. I got a shot for something, and I got a little card that I had to show, and I entered Switzerland with my passport that I was vaccinated. There was a vaccine mandate for entering at least Switzerland at that time. And there are many other vaccine mandates. As I said, in our Catholic school in the 1950s, we had a vaccine mandate. I remember Father Ercole, when he was going to Nigeria, he had to get a whole series of shots in order to enter Nigeria. And these were anti-malaria shots, which were very hard on him. He got, he didn't feel very good after getting this series of shots. Apparently, they're hard on your liver. But he had to get those, and he did, in order to bring the sacraments to the people in Nigeria. So again, there's nothing new about a vaccine mandate. Whether this is a good idea, I would say no, not in this case, because the fatality rate from COVID is very low. It's, I think, 0.6%. So is there a sufficient reason to require the vaccine mandate? I don't think so. Also, I am of the opinion, and I could be wrong on this, but I don't think the government has a right to order you to take anything in your body. I think that is something that is outside of the rights of the government.
All right, Your Excellency. The next question is about your last video. You recently responded to Bishop Dolan about the thesis. So could you explain the thesis a little more?
Yes, we are going to do something called the Thesis Show, which will be a series of videos which will explain the thesis in detail. But a lot of people may not even know what we're talking about. This is a controversy that came up recently. And the point is this, that sedevacantists have a big theological problem to solve. The sedevacantists are saying, we have no pope, we have no bishops. And it's all gone. See, that there's no authority whatsoever. Well, that poses a serious theological problem, and it is this. How then do you account for the dogma of the church that there must be an unbroken succession of hierarchy, that is, popes and bishops, from the time of St. Peter until the end of the world? How do you account for that? That is a dogma. This is not a theological opinion. It is a dogma of the church. When you say, I believe, when you put the word apostolic on the church as one of its marks. That is what you mean. That is one of the conditions of its apostolicity, is that it have that succession from the beginning of time until the end of the world. So you have to have, a sedevacantist must come up with a good explanation of how that happens. And I know there are many, many people that would not be sedevacantists except for the thesis. And the thesis is saying that although these popes and these Vatican II popes and bishops do not have authority to teach, rule, and sanctify the church, nonetheless, they have a legitimate title of succession. That is, that they succeed to their predecessors with legitimate title, that they are ready to receive power because they have that legitimate title, but they cannot receive the power until they intend to teach the Catholic faith and maintain Catholic practices, Catholic liturgical practices, Catholic disciplines. In other words, to restore the faith to the Catholic Church. If they do that, they then receive the jurisdiction to teach, rule, and sanctify the church. That is our position. The other side, the other explanation is totalism, and the only thing I have heard from their side is that one of them is that there could be a conclave of traditional bishops. The second is that Christ will appear in the heavens and appoint a pope. Or then there is the idea of the bishop in the woods, that someplace there is a bishop who is appointed by Pius XII, and he has jurisdiction to rule, but we don't know who he is or where he is. I find these explanations to be very faulty, and that's why I never adhered at all to totalism. I always knew that there was something different about our situation. In the time of Luther, Luther broke from the Catholic Church. Other heretics broke. They said, we want nothing to do with Rome, and they founded their own church. The old Catholics, after the First Vatican Council, who were early modernists actually, they said, we want nothing to do with Rome. We're founding our own church. We're calling it the Old Catholic Church. See, so these people broke from the church not only doctrinally, but also juridically. That is, as an organization, they broke from the church. So they left the church on their own. Some heretics were excommunicated by the church. That means you are no longer a member of the Catholic Church because of your heresy. And it's clear. So you have not only a doctrinal break, but also an organizational break. See, so that's clear. So if, therefore, a Lutheran comes to me and says, I want to be a Catholic, I have to follow the traditional norm, the canonical norm, of having him make a public abjuration of his Lutheranism before the altar with his hand on the Bible and sacred scripture with 2 witnesses. And he says, he makes a long abjuration, and he declares that he believes in all of the Catholic truths and rejects Lutheranism and the Lutheran Church. And he swears to that. And then the priest will stand up and absolve his excommunication, because he has a juridical bridge to cross, not only a doctrinal bridge to cross, but a juridical bridge. He must be absolved of that excommunication. So that was the purpose of my questions to Bishop Dolan. If what you are saying is true, if you are saying that there is a Novus Ordo church, which he mentioned in his bulletin, a church that is different totally in every respect from the Catholic Church, as if it were the Lutheran Church or the Presbyterian Church, then why do you not do these abjurations? Why do you not lift the excommunications? And I pointed that out to him to show him that there is an inconsistency in his ideas. An inconsistency is always a sign of error. Whenever you find an inconsistency in your ideas, the light goes on, you're in error. There is something wrong with your system. And so that was the purpose of the video. All I'm seeking with Bishop Dolan is the old status quo. For 25 years, we agreed to disagree on this issue. He was a totalist and has always been a totalist. And I have always adhered to the thesis. And we saw it as simply two different ways of explaining how these Vatican II popes are not popes. They're not true popes. We have always seen it as simply two different ways of explaining it, how they are not popes. And we got along famously for 25 years agreeing to disagree. And so I am just looking for the restoration of that status quo. I do not want any war or disagreement with Bishop Dolan. I would like to restore all of the good relationship that we had over the years between Cincinnati and Brooksville. And I really see no obstacle to it. But if he's going to accuse us of heresy or being suspect of heresy or smacking of heresy, that heresy word is a very serious thing. If he had said, I think it's a theological error, I would have said nothing. But the heresy word, it is a mortal sin to be a heretic. And furthermore, no one could say that a rector of a seminary or seminary faculty could be ignorant of the teaching of the church. We could not have the excuse of ignorance. We teach these things day by day. So how could we, we are supposed to be well read in theology and philosophy, and I think we are. How could we then be excused from the terrible sin of heresy? That word heresy bothered me very much, and that's why I felt obliged to say something about Bishop Dolan's position.
All right, Your Excellency, now a different question about the progress on the new seminary building in Pennsylvania.
Yes, finally we have started. They're doing what is called demolition, which sounds terrible, but it simply means preparing the building for the remodeling. We're doing a lot of remodeling throughout the whole building in order to accommodate the maximum number of priests and seminarians. So we will end up with an ability to house 25 seminarians, which would hold us for a number of years, I think, and about 4 or 5 priests. So so it's starting, and the move-in date given to me by the builder is June of next year, 2022. So we got an estimate of something like $2.4 million to do this, which I thought was very high. But one of the problems is that everything is high right now, both with the inflation and the fact that there are shortages, so that makes everything go up. So there was that problem. But that figure was for all of the ideal things that could be done to the building. So, for example, the architect said to me, "Would you like to put air conditioning in the whole building?" I said, "Well, that's an ideal, and that's a good idea. Let's see how it goes." So when the prices came back for that, I just said, "Well, forget it. We won't put in air conditioning in the building." So there's things like that. I cut back a lot of things, and so we recently came up with a figure of 1.4 million. Which is still a lot, and that does not include the kitchen. And they're throwing out the figure of 90,000 for the kitchen. The kitchen needs a complete remake, and it doesn't include a number of other things, such as things that I have to add, such as bookcases. We can't use the big, tall bookcases that we have here for our 15,000 book library, so I have to have those made special so that they're smaller. In order to accommodate all of our books. Nor does it include the fire alarm system. I was blown away by the figure of the fire alarm system, which was $75,000, which seems to me to be crazy. So we're shopping that. We're trying to find a lower figure on that. So that brings it up to 1.6, a little over 1.6 right now. So we are still hoping for your donations with regard to that, because we're going. There's a number of extras that, and also you always have overruns in anything like this. You discover that something has to be done. I just saw the bill today for the heating, because they have to turn off all the heat in order to put in this remodeling and the demolition, etc. And it's cold up in Pennsylvania. They have to get heaters. Well, I thought, well, that's nice. We'll get some heaters in there. And so I see the bill today, $14,000 in order to bring in these heaters. I don't even know if we're buying them, but that's what the builder sends me that bill. And so they look like jet engines, these heaters, I guess. But that is to keep the building warm and not to break pipes during this demolition process. So there are hidden things as we go along in this. Now, that was budgeted in, but the builder said, well, that's somewhat more than I thought. So we would very much appreciate your continued support. We're showing, for this time of year, a strong interest in the seminary. We have 3 already accepted and 2 interested. So for November, that's strong. Most of our interest comes in the spring. So if we're already running 5 so far, 3 definite and 2 interested, I think we're going to do much better in the spring. We will have a strong showing in the spring. So you should always keep vocations in your prayers. So we do need that building. We again have to, we're loaded in this building. We can't go any further in this building as far as rooms. And we're housing people off campus again by the generosity of our parishioners. They're letting us use a very nice home for this. And so, we need to expand. Also, I would like to buy a church in the Philadelphia area. You see, our chapel, although we're getting more rooms for seminarians, we're really cutting down in our chapel. Our chapel here is 5,000 square feet. Now, that includes a place for the people. So the place for the seminarians, though, is about, I would say, 2,000 square feet, maybe a little bit more. And we're scaling down to about 700 square feet in the new chapel. So we cannot do big ceremonies, and it's important that seminarians see the big ceremonies. You see, that's the only time in many cases that they will see them in the seminary. So we need a church in the area. We will we'll have a number of priests in the seminary. They will be able to go out and say Mass in various parts of southeast Pennsylvania and Maryland and even New Jersey and perhaps New York, where are many Catholics. But we need a church in which to have big ceremonies. Also, there is the church that in which we would say Mass for the local people would bring in income to the seminary. See, the seminary exists out of the donations that people give it, and also its apostolate that people can, if we say Mass in a certain place, people contribute to the seminary. So it lives off the parishes that it serves. So we're hoping to buy a church in the Philadelphia area. I would also ask you to please donate to that cause too. It would help us a great deal.
Your Excellency, my last question is about your thoughts on Archbishop Vegano.
Yes, I'm sure everybody has seen a lot of the things that he has been saying. He says some excellent things. He has a lot of insight into Vatican II and the new Mass and everything. And however he considers Sedevacantism, our position, I have heard, I haven't seen it from his own writings or his own mouth, but as dangerous. So he rejects our position, and as far as I can tell, he's all aligned with the recognize and resist position. And while I would praise practically everything that he says, with regard to criticizing Vatican II, and I think that's a good development, how is he solving the problem? If recognize and resist is the path, he gives us these dire condemnations of Vatican II and Bergoglio. He says we have a non-Catholic Pope. I mean, far beyond anything that Archbishop Lefebvre ever said. These total and dire condemnations. Well, what are we? That whole movement of recognize and resist. still recognizes, obviously, Bergoglio as a true pope and would like to submit the whole traditional movement to these modernist so-called popes. I would compare that to giving your child over to a child molester for babysitting. In other words, are we going to take this precious Catholic faith that we are preserving and then come under the auspices and the so-called authority of this hierarchy that has proven itself to be wolves in the clothing of shepherds? Are we going to give them the care of our Catholic faith? And you see recently that Bergoglio would like to take the Mass completely away from us. Are we going to do that? Is this the goal? Is this the end game, so to speak? And so I think that, it's sort of depressing when you listen to Archbishop Vegano. What are we doing about it? He's hiding. He is not coming out as Archbishop Lefebvre did and risked so many things, his reputation, everything. He didn't care. He's hiding and he's saying these things. How is he helping us? I mean, it's almost as if you need some sort of pill to keep your spirits up, an antidepressant after you listen to him. Because what is the outcome of this? How do we solve this problem? I would say that we, in rejecting those people who have destroyed the Catholic Church, we at least give the hope of doing something positive. We will never hand over to them the care of the Catholic religion. Never. But the other traditional groups, whether it's resistance and all of the various shades of recognize and resist, they all have that ultimate goal to negotiate with the modernists and somehow come under their authority. So I'd say Archbishop Vegano has told us many very insightful things, but at the same time, when I listen to him, I think this is depressing. That what are we doing about it? In other words, it's depressing for people who are following his direction. He is a part of the Novus Ordo. He has not repudiated the Novus Ordo. He was never known for saying the traditional Mass, as Cardinal Burke is, and Bishop Schneider, at least that. But he won't even come out and say, I repudiate the Novus Ordo, I repudiate Vatican II, it's a phony council, and this Pope is a phony Pope. If he did that, I would say bravo. But so far, it's just talk. And so that's how I would criticize him. And I would pray that he come to his senses on this and say, I have to do something about this. And I do think, too, that the fact that he could say these things favors the thesis, because the thesis is saying the way out of this problem is that one of the, or many of these bishops convert, and that they repudiate Vatican II, and they repudiate the whole program of John the 23rd and Paul VI, and that they convert. The fact that he is seeing what he's seeing and saying what he's saying says that it is not impossible that these bishops convert and regain authority. And so I think it's, in that sense, a good sign. But I wish that Archbishop Vegano would do something rather than merely talk, and I think he should abandon, recognize, and resist, because it is a dead end, and the death is in the Vatican II.
All right, thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you for your time and for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.